Ended up in my third marriage when I was 55. And after 10 months of marriage, he stormed out on New Year's Day of 2018 in a rage. And I realized at that moment, it was like I got the final brick to the head that I needed to realize that I was the common denominator in all of my relationships, not just my intimate relationships, but with my friends, with my family, with my bosses, coworkers. I was the common denominator in all of those relationships. And that moment that he walked out, literally, I said to myself, what am I doing to attract this in my life? Who am I being? Who am I showing up as that is causing this repeated pattern in my life of feeling like I was being mistreated, disrespected? But I realized I was mistreating myself. I was disrespecting myself. I wasn't standing up for myself. I wasn't speaking up for myself. And that took me on a path of figuring out what, if I could learn to be this way, which I figured out I did, right? I learned to be a people pleaser. I learned these patterns, these behaviors. If I could learn to be it, then I could learn to be something different that was not so devastating to my life.
Hey there, it's Suzanne Oshima, life coach for women in midlife, and your fellow sister on a mission to empower and inspire you through the twists and turns of midlife. I'm here to help you transform it into your best life with the Life is Now, Do It While You Can podcast. We only get one life, so let's make it count, and I'm super excited to dive into this new journey together. Welcome, everybody, to the Life is Now, Do It While You Can show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a life coach for women in midlife. And I have a very special guest today, Heidi Gustafson, and she's a hypnosis and transformation coach for women in midlife. And I'm so excited to have her here today, ladies, because guess what we're talking about? Something that I think that we all might have a little bit of an issue with, and that is how to stop being a people pleaser. So welcome, Heidi. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I already got goosebumps, so I know this is going to be awesome.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, before we jump into how to stop being a people pleaser, I would love to know your story of transformation, because it's not like you started out like, oh, I'm this great person helping women transform their lives. So can you share with us your story?
Sure. Real briefly, I ended up in my third marriage when I was 55. And after 10 months of marriage, he stormed out on New Year's Day of 2018 in a rage. And I realized at that moment, it was like I got the final brick to the head that I needed to realize that I was the common denominator in all of my relationships, not just my intimate relationships, but with my friends, with my family, with my bosses, coworkers. I was the common denominator in all of those relationships. And that moment that he walked out, literally, I said to myself, what am I doing to attract this in my life? Who am I being? Who am I showing up as that is causing this repeated pattern in my life of feeling like I was being mistreated, disrespected? But I realized I was mistreating myself. I was disrespecting myself. I wasn't standing up for myself. I wasn't speaking up for myself. And that took me on a path of figuring out what, if I could learn to be this way, which I figured out I did, right? I learned to be a people pleaser. I learned these patterns, these behaviors. If I could learn to be it, then I could learn to be something different that was not so devastating to my life. So that was the catalyst.
Now, how long ago was that happened?
That was January 1st of 2018. And we had gotten married February of 2017, literally 10 months later.
Oh my goodness. So that was 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you because I know that was a heartbreaking wake up call. But what I thought was so amazing in your story that you just shared, you said at 55, I was able, well, you didn't say it in these exact words, but this is what I deduced from it, is that you were able to look inward and really do the work to figure out what was going on, because a lot of times people can't do that when they're in heartbreak, right?
Right. I think you say that, and thank you. I appreciate your, honoring my story. It truly was a gift, and that will bring tears to my eyes because without that, I don't know that I would have had, without him walking out, storming out, and me having that like huge, huge, huge epiphany of that I was creating this in my life. I don't know that I wouldn't still be in that situation. Right. So
Right.
it is what was the turning point for me. And as much as I hated the abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse that I went through to get there, I wouldn't go back and redo it because it has given me the strength and the courage to be able to guide other women to break free from this. And that is, I got myself in that situation because of people pleasing. It wasn't that, yes, he was a toxic person, right? But I would not have attracted him. I truly believe I would not have attracted him and the other people in my life that were also that way. I just didn't recognize it at the time. But I wouldn't have attracted him had I not been a people pleaser. There is
Interesting.
a magnetic bond. There's a book called the Human Magnet Syndrome, written by Ross Rosenberg, about the magnetism between codependents and narcissists, right? And it is truly a situation that I don't wish upon anyone. But if you are in it, I encourage you, I invite you, I implore you to figure out how to break free of it. And it doesn't have to be terribly toxic either, right? People pleasers attract people that take advantage of them. Even they don't even realize they're taking advantage of them, but we teach people how to treat us, right? So if we're constantly saying yes to things, people are going to constantly like, okay, she said yes, like, let's ask her again because she'll say yes again, right? So a lot of people aren't doing it maliciously.
Right. Yeah. And what I find in what you just shared is that most people pleasers are big givers, right? And when you were talking about narcissists, I was like, well, narcissists are takers, right? And so that's why the dynamic works, is because when you're a big giver, narcissists are big takers, and it works until you start to put your foot down or start saying no or start honoring yourself rather than them. And then the dynamic doesn't work anymore. Um, that is so interesting to me. So, can I ask, and if you're not comfortable sharing, that's okay too, because I know you said this was your third marriage. Is in your previous two marriages, the first two marriages, was it the same dynamic where you were the people pleaser and they were narcissists and just completely took from you and drained you?
No. So I had a 17-year marriage sandwiched between two really short marriages. And my first was, and that's a great question, and I don't mind answering. He maybe had some, but I was mid-20s when I got married to him. He promised something to me before we got married, or he led me to believe that he wanted to have children. And right after we got married, in an innocent conversation, I wasn't asking about, hey, let's get started having children, right? I just innocently brought up in some way something about kids. And he said, I don't ever want you to bring that up again. I do not ever want to talk about that again. And this was weeks, I think, from what I remember. I'm 62 now, so that was many years ago, right? And I was like, whoa, what did I do? Right? And it wasn't long after he got fired from his job. He didn't tell me. He would get up, get dressed, go to work every day. He didn't tell me that he was no longer working, and I just decided, I'm out. I did not want to live my life that way. And I guess I was strong enough then, to leave. It took a lot for me to leave, but I did. And then I met, I don't remember how many years later. I don't think very long after I met my 17-year husband. He was very emotionally, I wouldn't say unavailable, but not very emotionally intelligent. And I wasn't either. Like, I had clearly faults of my own. Like, I lived as a people pleaser, right? So I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I had the right to say or not to say. And I was taught, right? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? So I learned, I think a lot of us learn as young girls, especially, right? Guys get this too, but not as much as girls, right? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Don't hurt anyone's feelings. Don't disappoint them. Be a nice girl, sugar and spice, right? Like all these, be a good girl. And so I didn't speak my truth, but I also didn't know my truth, right? I didn't know because I didn't have good role models that modeled that for me.
You
And so
mean as in your parents weren't good role
right,
models in the out way?
right. And they were loving, but quietly loving, right? They weren't emotionally demonstrative. We didn't talk about things, right? Nothing. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, right? Like that's what I learned, to just suppress my emotions and suppress what I felt and not speak up. I wouldn't be believed. I had 2 older brothers who were not very nice to me, but I knew that if I spoke up, I would end up being retaliated against by them, right? And so I kept it in. And then we develop those habits, right? And we grow into adults who, that's just the way we are. And we can talk about, like, I'm hypnosis certified, right? So I've studied the subconscious mind, and we can talk about how that all plays into it, because it is it's 95% of the equation is our subconscious mind. So, but to answer your question, no, they weren't like the third husband. Again, he was the brick to the head, the 2x4, the Mack truck, however you want to put it, that I needed to start on a different path. Yeah. And the very next week, that was a Monday. I can remember it clearly. New Year's Day on 2018 was a Monday. The following Monday, I went to my first Codependents Anonymous meeting, and I went religiously for 3 years, every week.
Can I just say, Heidi, that the fact that you were able to get back on your feet the very next week and do that is nothing short of amazing. Because I've seen where people they don't stay there forever, but it takes them maybe a month to get back up, or because they need to cry and get it out. The fact you got back up in a week and started doing, and on your journey to healing is amazing, and transformation. I should say healing and transformation, because you really transformed your life.
Yes, I have. And I had already started some of it. And the thing that made me mad, this is kind of laughable, is that I had pulled out, I had a boundaries book, right, by Cloud and Townsend. It's like the Boundaries Bible, right? And I had that book. I had bought it, I think, with my second marriage and never really thought I had gotten something out of it, but had never really applied it, right? And so now I'm in this marriage where he is being manipulative and I'm starting to figure it out. And so I happened to pull out that book, but because he wanted me in his sight at all times, and the only way really I could get away from him was I went to work, right? So I worked 8 hours a day and then had another hour of driving. That was my only respite from this relationship. He didn't want me going out with my friends. He didn't want me going to yoga, which, was for my health. And I remember finding my boundaries book and locking myself in my bathroom, sitting on the toilet so that I could try and osmosis all of the words from the boundaries book into my brain so that I could start applying this to this marriage to see if it would turn it around. I thought it was me. I thought I needed to change something about myself. And that's a people pleasing habit, right? That's who we think we're to blame and that we're the burden and that we have to be compliant. And I mean, all of it is put on us. We think that we have to change. If I could only be nicer, if I could only be more loving, if I could only be better, then this marriage would turn around, right? But
Yeah.
it's exhausting just talking about it. It gets it. I'm so adamant about it now that I understand how much I played into it, but not because I wasn't nice enough. It was because I was too nice, right? And I didn't know my rights, and I'm just talking about the right to speak up and to speak my mind. One of the scariest moments I had with him, we were disagreeing about something, arguing about something, which was not very common, because he would just dismiss me, right? And I would just go quiet. And it was something silly. I don't even remember what it was. And I kind of laughed and I said, I don't understand why you can't just embrace our differences, right? I mean, it could be something as simple as you think chocolate ice cream is best. And I'm saying, no, I prefer coffee ice cream, And he would not let it go. And I said, I just don't understand why you can't embrace this difference that we have. And he looked me in the eye and said, because we are not different, we are the same. And I was
that's scary.
whoa, that was another turning moment. And that was probably just a month or two before he stormed out. So I lived through another month or two of him being very controlling and manipulative. But again, I had allowed that to occur, right? I had allowed it. And I'm not blaming myself. I'm just saying that these people pleasing behaviors of overlooking and tolerating and apologizing for ourselves can be very detrimental to our lives.
Yeah, no, exactly. Can I ask how long you dated him before you got married?
2 years.
And was he like that in the 2
No,
years? That's so
not that I
weird.
saw. It was like someone flipped a switch when we got married.
That must have freaked you out.
A little
That
bit, yeah.
he turned into this totally different person. And when you were talking about everything would it was the little things like chocolate ice cream or whatever it was. It's like when you were describing it, I was thinking in my head going, that must have been the most exhausting 10 months of your life because not only are you walking on eggshells, you didn't have time to yourself. He controlled everything. And then when you just say the simple thing about which ice cream is better, and then he looks you in the face and it feels threatening. Like when you said it, I
It,
felt threatened.
it was threatening. Yeah. And I think that's their MO, right? Is to make you feel not safe. Because then you'll do anything to not let them go, right? Because they become your savior.
So when he walked out the door, were you begging him not to, or were you kind of done at that point? Were you kind of like, go, I need you to
Yeah,
go?
there had been some things that had transpired over the prior 24 hours. And
Mhm.
I knew there was something in me that had clicked a few hours before he stormed out, that I was
Mhm.
like, this isn't me. There's nothing I could possibly do. This is a injured individual who has some deep-seated crap that's going on. I didn't know what it was. And it's not about me. There's nothing I can do. And there was like this calmness that came over me. He literally we were living in my house, and he literally came upstairs, brought big black grocery bags, and was just violently stuffing all of his stuff, sweating profusely. It was January 1st, right? It's not hot out. Just sweating profusely, his face red with rage. And I said, it doesn't have to be this. I came upstairs and I said, it doesn't have to be this way. And he said, you leave me no choice. And I was
Of
like,
course, the
okay,
narcissist blames you.
right. So I went back downstairs, and this is so funny. Like, it's so surreal. And I was like, I feel kind of hungry. And so I got something out of the refrigerator and I heated it up and I sat down in a chair and I started eating it. It was like soup, with my back to the kitchen. And all of a sudden I could feel a presence right behind me. And I turned around and he was right there. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I was hungry. I'm eating." And he said, "At a time like this, right?" And he lost it.
Oh
And
my God.
I was as calm as I could be. I don't know how. There was like a presence, maybe it's God, the universe, source, whatever, right? Took over me. And it's like, you just have to make it through this, and I will carry you through, right? This is what is supposed to be happening. And yeah.
Oh
And
my gosh, Heidi. I mean, my heart is broken because when you were describing, I was terrified for you because when you feel that presence and he's right there, that's scary.
it was
That was
scary.
terrifying.
Yeah.
And then
And,
did he leave forever after that?
yep. But
Thank God.
so that was a Monday. Tuesday, I went to work. I don't know how I made it through the day. I told only my assistant that what had happened. And I told her, do not tell anybody, but I just need you to know why. If I'm quiet or hiding or in the bathroom for a long time, you'll know why. And a day or two later, I was listening to a podcast on the way home about narcissism. I don't know that I really knew the word, or knew much about it or thought that he was one, but somehow this came into my presence, right? And I found this podcast episode and they were talking about narcissistic behavior. And then they talked about at the end, this type of therapist that is trained specifically. And I don't remember the methodology, I don't remember the name of it. But so I got home, I got on my computer and I looked up this methodology to see what it was. And the second thing that popped up on the Google search was this counselor that was 2 miles from my house that used this type of method with couples to help them navigate this. So that was a Friday. The next morning, I decided I was going to call the number to see like what their office hours were and see what I could find out on the voicemail, right? Or the message. She answers the phone. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't planning on, talking to anyone. I just wanted to see like how this worked and what your office hours were." And she said, "Well, what do you have going on?" And she actually invited me on this call to tell her what was happening. And we probably had a 30-minute conversation, and she asked me some questions. She said, is this what has been happening? Right? Like, I didn't tell her. She asked me specifically, and I was like, how does this woman know him? And she said, he is a narcissist. You are married to a narcissist. And I was like, can they change? Like, I had no clue. I was very ignorant about it. And she said, very rarely, because they don't believe that they are, right? So that, along with Codependents Anonymous, I never saw her as a counselor, but she changed my life.
Oh, I love that.
In that 30-minute phone call that she was just so gracious to give me.
It's everything lined up. Like, I don't care if people are religious or spiritual, it was divine intervention. It was very serendipitous, and I'm so glad that when she answered, you know how some people are like, "Oh God, I didn't want to talk to her," and then you might hang up. I'm so glad you didn't, right? Like, you could have been, "I'm not ready for this. I just wanted to get a little information
about the process," right? Like, and would it work if only I could go, right? Because I didn't want to see him.
Yeah, no.
We had been going to a counselor.
Oh, you
So,
had.
yep. And
Now, oh,
unfortunately, she was not a good counselor. She added
yeah.
to the trauma.
I'm so sorry, but I'm so
So,
glad you found this other woman because it sounds like she was the catalyst for you really turning around your life into something better.
right. And she said, "I have 2 books to recommend to you. Would you like to know the names?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I bought the one on Kindle that night and started devouring it. It's called How to Become the Narcissist Nightmare. And we're talking about this like this is supposed to be about people pleasing, right? And how I broke free of people pleasing, but it's a key part of the story. And um I I'm not a I have since helped a lot of women who have had narcissists in their life, right? I had a woman my age whose mother-in-law constantly belittled her, called her fat, spoke to her in a way until she would be sobbing, but she wasn't. She thought she would be cowardly if she got up and walked away, and so she didn't, right? But that's how we attract these people, is because we were taught, right? We learned, we were not only taught, we were conditioned, right? It's the pattern, it's the conditioning that's in the brain that is just the software. I say that we're like computers when we're born. We're like a blank computer, and everything we experience, everything we're told, that we hear, that we observe, goes in as the software, right?
Yeah.
So I was told when I was young I didn't have the mouth to be a singer. I wanted to be a singer, right? That stayed in there, right? I remember it 60 years later. I remember that, and now it's part of the programming. But the beautiful thing is that it doesn't have to stay part of the programming. I mean, I've let that go, but I tell it as a story because maybe you were told you're not good at math, or that you're ugly. I spoke to a lady yesterday. She's 70, and she was told repeatedly when she was young that she was lazy and ugly.
That always breaks my heart. It's so
Right.
sad
And
because
so
it's like
that,
you said. Go ahead.
yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. No sorries. Go.
I know. Sorry is a part of people pleasing, right?
It absolutely
That's
is.
actually a whole nother podcast that we should do about not saying sorry, because it's true. I coach that too, is not to say you're sorry unless it's really something really did
That
wrong to
you
hurt somebody, right? Instead
right.
of like sorry for interrupting you. But now I lost my train of thought. I went down a whole
What were we
different
talking
path.
about?
About the
I don't
woman.
remember.
Oh, about the woman who was told she was ugly. When you were telling your story about you growing up, it's interesting to me because all of us were taught things as we were growing up. And not that well, I'm just going to speak for myself. Not that my parents were meant to do these things. They only were doing the best that they could, right?
Absolutely.
Um, Right. And so, like you said, we learned that. So then, fast forward 20, 30 years, we think that that's normal in our head. And so, if people start to say, or you may question yourself in your head, say, why do I keep attracting the same men? Is because you think in your head that their behavior is normal. Maybe it's what you grew up with or what you're used to.
Or
So
it's me. I'm being too sensitive. I'm being too whatever, right? I'm not being understanding enough. Oh, he didn't mean it. I called myself the queen of second chances, right? Like I would give second chances and third chances and fourth chances because it's like, well, surely they didn't mean it. I must have misunderstood. I'm being too sensitive, whatever, right? And like, yeah, that's a very diminishing behavior, but again, it's the pattern. And
yeah,
so to continue on that story, right? So we learn these things when we're young. They go in because before the age of 7 or 8, we have no analytical ability. We are like walking sponges up until about that age. And so everything that we hear, that we experience, goes in as truth, and it becomes the software that runs our life. Then we grow up and we identify with it, right? It's just who I am. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a nice person. I'm a giver. I had a client tell me that. Like she's like, "Well, it's just who I am to give." It's like, "Well, it doesn't have to be, right? If it is hurting you and your life, then we can change that because a lot of times, and tell me if you thought this, like I just thought that's who I was, that it was not changeable, that it was set in stone, that I was a people pleaser, always to be a people pleaser, always to be nice.
yeah. So I agree with it with a slight variation.
Okay.
Is um, when I was younger, I didn't call it people pleasing. I used to
No.
say, right, because we didn't know. We just thought we were a big giver. I just want to help people. But as I've gotten old and as a coach, I started to realize, oh, you're a people pleaser. And not only that, not only are you a people pleaser, but every time you say yes to somebody else, when you don't really want to, is you're kicking yourself and you're doing at the detriment of your own life, because then it's Suzanne complaining about, I don't have time for this in my life, I don't have time for that, and then begrudgingly going along and doing it because I'm a giver, I just want to help people. And when I started to realize that I was doing it at the detriment of my own life, and I was like, you're the only one to blame, you could have said no, right? And
Right.
so I started exercising, saying, no, I'm sorry. I can't. I guess I shouldn't say I'm sorry. I can't.
Right. I have a podcast episode, actually two of them, I think, on saying sorry. And a
Yeah.
YouTube video on that because that is truly one, I think, one of the most um detrimental habits that a people pleaser has. And I'm curious to know, like you were talking about when we grew up, we didn't call ourselves people pleasers, right? It wasn't a thing. Do you think women that you coach who have these behaviors, do they think of themselves? Would they call themselves a people pleaser before you pointed it out to them?
No. Well,
No.
I shouldn't say no. I should say it depends. And here's why. Is some people are not in the self-aware state of going, why is this happening?
Right.
Let me do some introspection and self-awareness and figure out, like you did, what's going on, right? They just think this is how they are and this is how other people are. And so they may not see that. Whereas other people may be in that state that you were, is like, what's going on? I'm the common denominator. I get to do some work on myself and start figuring out why this is a pattern for me. So it really depends on where someone's at. But I would say
Yeah.
in general, when someone's not in the self-aware state of why is this always happening, they don't call themselves a people pleaser. It's after they discover it that they start calling themselves, oh, I'm a people pleaser.
Right, right. And then they start identifying as that, right? That people pleaser. And anything I tell people, anything you follow, I am a people pleaser. I am lazy. I am whatever, right? That is what you believe yourself to be.
Yep.
That's what you identify with. And as long as you continue identifying with it, you will have a really hard time. You will stay stuck there because
Yeah.
what our identity is one of the strongest things. But the beautiful thing again is we can change our identity. And that's where hypnosis for me with my clients works really well, because it allows us to open that door to the subconscious to help us get new beliefs in there with repetition. Our beliefs, our thoughts are just habits. So it's just like changing and replacing a old habit or a bad habit with a healthy habit, with a new habit, right? It takes repetition to do that. And so within 2 to 3 weeks, we can have them start believing something new. Sometimes it's even faster than that. Sometimes it's immediate that they have this. I had one client, she said after her first session, and she didn't recognize it until 2 or 3 weeks later, she said, I have not had the thought that I had every morning for years. I just realized 2 or 3 weeks later after her first session, she said, I just realized I haven't thought that thing that I thought for years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's pretty amazing. And we when we were young, we lived our life in a hypnotic brainwave state, right? It's just a theta brainwave state, a slower brainwave state that allows things to go into the subconscious and become the programming. And that's just what I help them do. And I have other methods that I use. It's not always hypnosis because some people don't want to do hypnosis, but I tell them it's just like meditation, right? You're just being quiet and listening to a story, and I'm the one telling you the story. So it's pretty benign, but it's pretty powerful.
I love that. I really love that. Um, so here's an interesting thing that I just thought of, because you didn't do hypnosis before that marriage ended, right? So,
No.
because I think your story is so intriguing and so interesting. And so if someone like you was in that exact same situation, came to you when he stormed out the door, and they came to you and they said, Heidi, I'm interested in your hypnotherapy and helping me figure out what's going on, like, I know everybody's different, but I'm just trying to get a sense of, on average, how many sessions would it take to help them start turning things around? Because like that one client you had, you said after the first session, she didn't think that horrible thought in her head the next day. So
Right.
just curious, on average, can you give a number? And if you can't, that's okay. I was just curious.
It is really, that's really difficult. I've done anywhere from one session with somebody to working with somebody for a year.
Mm.
But it's not hypnosis every time, right? So I coach like you do. And so we're coaching about talking about beliefs. And this is one of the things that when I got into Codependents Anonymous, I went every week for a year. And I knew that boundaries were one of my big issues, right? Is that I wasn't able to say no. I wasn't able to speak up for myself. I didn't feel right doing that. And so I was like, okay, I got it, right? I got that I need to start speaking up for myself. I need to start saying no more. So I started trying to change my behavior, right? And I would do well for maybe a week or two, and then I would boomerang back to the old me of always being agreeable and just go with the flow and go along with the crowd and say yes and go out with a guy that I wasn't really interested in, and just crap like that. And I was like, why? I'm a smart woman. I know boundaries are the problem. Why can't I figure this out? Right? I'm doing all the things. I'm putting in all the work. I'm reading all the books. I'm studying everything that I could study, listening to all the podcasts. Like, why? Why can I not shift this? I was sitting in a Codependents Anonymous meeting one night, and it hit me like a bolt of lightning, something that was written in the book. And it said something about, it's not about your behaviors only, it's about the beliefs you have about yourself. And I was like, oh my goodness, I get goosebumps like when I say it, because I can remember the chair I was sitting in when I got this, and I wrote quickly in my workbook, it's my beliefs that are the problem. This is going to change my life. I can show you the workbook where it's written. And I started writing down like beliefs I had. I'm not worthy. I don't have the right to speak up. I started writing down all the beliefs that I heard myself saying, telling myself, right? You're never going to have a loving relationship. You don't deserve it, blah, 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 right? All those things. That's because our beliefs drive our behaviors.
Yeah.
It can't be the other way around, right? So I was trying to change my behavior, but the belief, which is in the subconscious, was still there.
Yeah.
As soon as I went to work on that, I mean, that was like a huge game changer for me. It was a different world. And
That's amazing.
I don't remember even what you asked me, but that's what I help my clients with, right? Because those beliefs, a lot of them, most of them are in our blind spot.
Yeah.
Right? We don't even know they're there. So it's like when you're driving in your car and someone's driving in your blind spot, it's called a blind spot for a reason, right? We don't know it's there. And what are you going to do? Like turn into them because you don't know they're there. You're going to like put yourself right in the path of a collision of bad, right? Because you don't know it's there. So I help them. Oh, that's what I was talking about. So I coach them, right? And we just talk about what things were they taught when they were young? What things do they hear themselves repeating to themselves? Because those are coming from beliefs. And so then we go in and figure out, what do you want to believe about yourself, right? I wanted to believe I was worthy of everything good in my life, right? That I'm limitless and abundant. But until I was able to rewire that patterning, that habit of thought, that belief is not going to change.
Yeah.
So sometimes those beliefs, like the woman I worked with, that was the question you asked, how long, right? So she had some really deep-seated beliefs. She was taught when she was young, and this didn't come up until maybe 6 months in. She said to me one day, I don't know where this came from, but I hear in my head a lot, God, others, self. And what I heard initially when she said that was the words God, others, self, right? Like on one line. And then I said, tell me again. And she said, God, others, self. And I could see it. God, others, self. So it was like a pyramid.
I see. Yeah.
And she is always the low man on the totem pole,
Yeah.
based on this belief, on this pattern that was deeply ingrained. I'm sure it was from Sunday school, right? So you go to Sunday school when you're 5 and 6 and 7. So she learned it as a rule. It was a truth that she could not ever put herself before another person, or she was bad. She was going against what God wanted her to do. That
Yeah.
was the rule she lived for 60 plus years of her life.
That's crazy.
That allowed, or that tolerated, her husband having multiple affairs over and over and over again, and her knowing it, but staying because she thought that's what a perfect, loving wife would do, right? What they were called to do. And to have her mother-in-law constantly belittle her.
Oh my God, that breaks my heart.
I know, it breaks my heart too. That, and I know she's not the only person out there, right? But when we grow up with these beliefs, with these things that we think are true, and like you said, most of the time it wasn't done maliciously, right? It's just they were doing the best that they knew how. I have asked my mom, like, what do you know what a people pleaser is? And she's like, yeah, it's someone who makes other people's lives better and happy. And like, yeah, so that's what she lived. That's what she thought was the right way to be. And that's where I learned it from.
That's so interesting when you asked your mom about the definition of a people pleaser, because you just made me realize when you just said what her answer was, how other people could view it in a positive way. But then when you do the work and you realize that you're doing it at the detriment of yourself, how we view it when we've done the work as a people pleaser is no, that's negative, but she viewed it as positive. That was very interesting.
Well, and I think that's what, until they become aware, like you said, I think that's what most women in particular believe, that
Yeah.
I'm just making other people happy. But I heard one time someone say, we cannot serve other people. We cannot be serving them when we're trying to please them. And I was like, whoa, right?
That's amazing.
And
I love that.
here's I think the biggest thing that I tell my clients when they become suddenly aware that, oh my gosh, these behaviors that I thought were good, right? Overlooking things, always being nice, apologizing, tolerating, right? All of those things, complying. When I open up that, you know, you're saying yes all the time and you're complaining to me that you don't have any energy, right? That your health is bad, that you're drinking too much, that you're numbing, then that tells me that something is not right, right?
Yep.
And so when I reveal to them that all this giving and overgiving and overlooking and numbing and all of that, that is causing you to not live the best life that you can. And then I throw the bombshell on them. I say, you're not going to like to hear this, but actually your people pleasing is very manipulative. And they're like, what?
It is.
When we do these things in order to be liked, to be accepted, to not be rejected, to control, right, the other person and how they perceive us, that's manipulative.
And I know why that is, but can you explain because I can hear the women in my audience going, what do you mean that's manipulative? Can
What?
you explain why? I know why that is.
So, like I said, if I'm wearing a mask, right, and showing up as not my authentic self, I'm not speaking my truth because I'm afraid that you'll reject me. And this is with friends as well, right? Or family members. You'll reject me. You will um, retaliate against me, or you'll perceive me as less than, you'll judge me, right? So I put on this mask that I wear to be this nice person. And that didn't hurt my feelings. No, it's okay. It's fine, right? When I do that, I am controlling how you interact with me. And I am not allowing you the opportunity to interact with me in a way that is two people interacting authentically, right? I might have my friend as being authentic and they maybe hurt my feelings, right? That they didn't mean to, but they did, but I don't say anything because I don't want I don't want to hurt their feelings or disappoint them or make them mad or whatever. So I don't act with them authentically by telling them my truth. That is manipulation.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
It's being in a way that is not authentic. That's manipulative.
do you think that it's also manipulative in this way also? I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this. Is that because as a people pleaser, right, we're giving to somebody, we're doing something for somebody, right? And um the way I look at it is it can also be manipulative in that, well, I'm doing this for you and that you'll need me, right? Need me.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
that and you'll owe me. Not, and I don't mean like tit for tat. I just mean that you're thinking in your head, well, then they can never I gave to them, they have to give to me. And you, again, not
Or
tit
they
for
or
tat
they can,
meaning.
right, or they can never point the finger that I wasn't a giving
Yes.
person, right? Or they
Yeah.
can't judge me, or right. And that's conditional giving, right? It's not
Yeah.
giving for the sake of giving. It's giving in order to be perceived a certain way or to be treated a certain way, to not be abandoned, rejected. And nobody wants to be rejected, right? But wouldn't you rather speak your truth? This is what I finally have come to. I would rather speak my truth and have them reject me because of that and know who they really are, right? In the face of that, or would I rather have them stay with me as a friend or a partner or whatever, only if I act a certain way?
Yeah. And then you're not happy. You're not being your authentic self. And then what's the point? Right.
And I'm resentful because
Right.
how dare them treat me that way after all I did for them?
Yeah. This has been amazing, Heidi. Oh
It
my
has
God.
been.
I could go on and on. I mean, I love this topic, but we do have to end. I would love
Oh,
for you to share with our audience how people can find you.
I'm in all the places. Mastering Midlife with Heidi. I think the place I would love for women to go the first, because I think it would be where they can continue this story with me, is to my YouTube channel, where I have lots of videos on people pleasing and toxic behavior, and how people pleasers can be toxic sometimes themselves, right? um I have a great video on there about how hypnosis changed my life. And it's not a hypnosis thing, it is talking about how I stopped people pleasing and built up my own self love and self acceptance through using hypnosis. And it's a great, I love that video, how it turned out. So there's
And what's
lots of
your YouTube
resources.
channel called?
Mastering Midlife with Heidi.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this was so amazing. So amazing. I love sharing my story in hopes that someone else will that it will impact their life in a positive way, and maybe the light will creep in a little bit where they can see hope and freedom, right, in standing up and speaking up for themselves.
Oh, you're so welcome, Heidi. And I just want to say to you that you are so courageous to share your story. I know it wasn't easy. I saw the emotions in your face. And even though it happened, in 2018, it's the feelings and emotions are still very raw. So I know that's not easy for you either. But the fact that you're willing to do that, trust me, it's helping a lot of women in midlife, and they're realizing, oh my God, it's not too late for me. I can do exactly what Heidi did, and I
Yeah,
can turn around my life and I could transform it. And, someone just hearing this interview might just say, and I'm not scared to leave whoever it is that is treating
right.
me that way. So I celebrate you for empowering women in midlife. Wait, before you go, if you're ready to stop people pleasing and start putting yourself first and start living your best life, but you don't want to do it alone, I'd love to invite you to join the Circle of Love Sisterhood. It's my amazing community of women in midlife who are saying yes to change, taking their dreams off the back burner, and creating their next exciting chapter together. It's time to make new connections, build lasting friendships, and thrive in midlife together. So come join the waitlist at suzanneoshima.com/waitlist. And the doors will be opening soon, and I can't wait to welcome you in.